I always, like just now when I was having lunch, and some of the women that were sitting next to me, when they found out who I was, said, maybe we need to eat at a different table so we don't feel so self-conscious about what we're eating. And I said something that I've now said thousands and thousands of times. I promise you, nothing that goes in your mouth is going to affect my health.
It's willpower.
That's a good way to put it.
Yeah.
Well,
Very diplomatic.
That's true.
I want people to understand that. I want people. Now let's go ahead and turn that audio on. I want people to eat better because they want the results of eating better. I don't want people to eat better because I'm standing there or somebody's watching them or something. That's just a wrong way to eat better. So, people say knowledge is power. No. Acting on correct knowledge gives you power. The knowledge doesn't help you unless you use it. Oh, yeah. Grab a bunch of them, bring them back there.
There goes the person who stands over and watches us.
Oh, Natalie watches you all? Okay. Well, I whenever I'm local, because I've lived in San Diego since 1979, whenever I'm local and I'm lecturing, I bring recording equipment so that assuming the recording comes out well, I can put it up on my website and I can direct Natalie as to where it is and she can let everybody know. And so anybody that wants to see it again, anybody that couldn't get here, will be able to see all the slides. And it's something that I can only do when I'm local. Because if I go, I lecture at medical conferences, I lecture at nutrition conferences, I lecture at nutritional dental conferences, I lecture at agricultural conferences, although mostly I just sit in my office and help my patients improve their health. But at those conferences, they're doing all the recordings. And if you want one of their videos, then, they charge you for them. I'd rather give the things that I've lectured out for free. If I'm giving a free lecture, why shouldn't other people that couldn't make it there be able to access that free lecture? And so I try to do that. So there's a humongous amount of stuff on my website. It's all free. And then there are people that want to take my 10-week course. My 10-week course has been offered now for about 30 years. I've met a couple people here that took it 25 years ago. And it's at the Price Pottinger Nutrition Foundation in Lemon Grove, and it's always Tuesday evenings. It's always 10 consecutive Tuesday evenings for 3 hours, once a week for 10 weeks. But how many people are going to fly into San Diego once a week for 10 weeks to take something, even if it's going to change their entire life? So I finally recorded the last one. And now people can go to my website, this big green banner on my homepage. It says Nutrition Education Association lectures by David Getoff. And now if they want to, they can rent, for 3 months, the rights to, watch the course. But anytime I can give things for free, I love doing that, especially when it doesn't take me, 10 weeks and 300 hours worth of editing and everything. I love doing things for free. So, my wife asked me to do her a favor. And she said, please ask if there is a Margaret here that swims early in the morning in 24-hour fitness.
There she is.
Oh, okay.
How did your wife know that?
Well, she knew that you were here. And she knew that I was going to be lecturing here. And she said, I just wonder if she'll be at your lecture. She said, so ask. I said, okay.
Does she swim there? Or did I?
Yeah, she swims there all the time. She swims there every morning. And apparently there are a couple of people that are here that she has sometimes seen over there. So I said, okay, I can do that. That's no problem. So, title is Food and Nutrition Myths That Can Harm Your Memory and Shorten Your Life. And there are many, many, many of them. And we will see how many we can cover in the time we have here from 2:30 to 4:30. I'm not sure if they kick us out. I kick myself out because my class is running and this is Tuesday. And so I'll be teaching my class from 5:30 to 9:30 in Price Pottinger in Lemon Grove. And so I have to leave here in time to get that set up anyway. But that gives me plenty of time. If I leave here at 4:45, I can do that. DavidGetoff.com will redirect you to my website. My website is naturopathforyou.com, but people misspell the word naturopath. Then they want to know, is it the number 4? Or is it F-O-R? Or is it F-O-U-R? Is it the letter U? Is it YOU? I said, fine, okay, I'll buy davidgetoff.com. And believe it or not, people get that wrong. Over and over and over again. Your website's down, David. No, it's not. Yeah, no, I put it davidgetoff.com. It didn't bring me there. Did you graduate kindergarten? You go, that's a stupid question. Why you ask me that? Well, because I figure if you graduated kindergarten, you can probably spell David, you can probably spell get, you can probably spell off. Oh, it's that they put in an extra T, they took out one of the F's, they added an H in the middle. I said davidgetoff.com like the two words. I don't know how much clearer I can be. Like the two words, get off. Okay, so what do you do? All right, so what is a myth? A myth is a popular belief or tradition which has only imaginary or unverifiable abilities to, try to give you the information. And there's a lot of myths out there. There are many, 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 many. These are just a few. All the planets revolve around the Earth, because that's what we used to think a long time ago. Obviously, we're the center of the universe, right? We're thinking beings, and everything else is a plant or an animal, so we must be the center of the universe. And when Galileo and Copernicus found out that that wasn't true with the first telescopes, they were kicked out of the Catholic Church for saying something that was so blasphemous and ridiculous, but they were right. Everything doesn't revolve around the Earth. So the myth perpetuated, and because they challenged it, they got smashed. So another one was that doctors can't transmit disease by some invisible means, which of course we know that these invisible means, and now they have names, they're bacteria, fungi, viruses. I mean, none of us can see them. They're all invisible to the naked eye, but they certainly transmit disease. They're disease-causing things, we call them pathogens. But Dr. Semmelweis, many, 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 many years ago, he was wondering why it was that the doctors that were doing autopsies, that were working on corpses, and then the person in one of the rooms was now getting ready to deliver her baby, and so they would go in there to help deliver the baby, and they'd go back to what they were doing. And there was a really high incidence of different types of diseases. One specifically, one was called puerperal fever. And he said, I wonder if maybe the doctors who are working on a dead body could possibly be transferring something that we don't see into the room and infecting these women that they're delivering babies on. So he started mandating that all the doctors in his hospital had to wash their hands before they went in to deliver a baby. And the rate of those conditions dropped through the floor because he was right. But this got out of what he was doing. He wrote a paper on it, and he was kicked out of the medical profession for having the audacity of saying that a doctor could possibly transmit disease to somebody. Well, now we all know that's ridiculous. Anybody can transmit disease. But he was kicked out of medicine for it, even though the fact that doctors can't transmit disease is a myth, and he was right. Another one was that heavier than air vehicles can't fly. If it's heavier than air, how's it going to go up? It has to be lighter than air, right? Those were blimps and hot air balloons, either helium or just hot air. And thankfully, otherwise we wouldn't have planes, thankfully the Wright brothers and even Leonardo da Vinci did a lot of work on first planes. And now I would consider jets and planes being heavier than air. And they have no problems taking me all over the country to lecture or to learn things. And this is a more current one, that the silver fillings in everybody's mouth that has a silver filling. In dentistry, they're called silver amalgam fillings, but if it's a silver-colored filling, they all are silver amalgams. That the 50 to 54% mercury, which they're all made of, every single one, somehow or other stayed, they just remained in the filling, never went anywhere. And the American Dental Association has been lying to dentists for 40, 50 years, saying, oh no, mercury's locked in there. We know that mercury is one of the top 6 or 7 most poisonous substances in the world, but it just stays there. It doesn't go anywhere. And back in the 70s, they developed mercury vapor meters. And they were used for industry, and they're still used. They're used now by OSHA, Occupational Safety and Health, to see whether or not if there's some sort of mercury spill, did they clean it up well enough, or there's still some mercury in the environment. Well, they were putting them in people's mouths, and the needle was pinning all the way up because of how much mercury was there. And the American Dental Association continued to lecture to their dentists that it was locked into the silver filling, even after it was proven that no, it's not locked in at all. They're not making an alloy, it's just an amalgam of things together. And only recently, just in the last not too many years, when they were threatened that they would be sued, and then it would get out to everybody. They didn't want it to get out to everybody. It was bad enough that they were going to have to admit it on their website. So did they send out a notice to every single licensed dentist in the United States saying, we were wrong, and actually we've known it for 35 years, we just have to now say it? No. They had nothing, no, we weren't required to do that. They just had to take down the statement on their website and put one up that said, we understand and accept that the mercury in all silver dental fillings is leaching into your body 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And I've had dentists come to me and say, yeah, you told me that, I didn't believe you. And I went on the website, and sure enough, it was there. And they never told any of us. They just sort of put it up there. So myths have a tendency to perpetuate if saying something that lets us know that it's a myth is going to hurt somebody's occupation or their bottom line. So a few myths that still perpetuate, even after being proven wrong. Saturated fats are bad for us, and canola oil is good for us. That's a myth. It's been proven wrong for a long, long time. Nutritional supplements are a waste of our money. They're still saying that, and we'll go over some of the reasons that they're saying that. That is a myth and is wrong. Whole grains, oatmeal, all those various different whole grains, really, really good for you. No, and we'll explain why. People should eat lots of fresh fruit every day. If you're trying to see how fast you can get diabetes or make your diabetes worse, because it's a massive amount of sugar, we'll go over that. Red meat causes cancer and heart disease. And that's never been proven, but they're making it up and saying it, and they finally retracted it recently, but they didn't let the retraction come out so you could all see it. I'll show it to you. Chicken is healthier than red meat. No, not true. That was just a big marketing campaign. We should eat many small meals every day instead of 2 or 3 larger meals. Totally untrue. That's not the way our body was set up. We didn't have stores. We didn't have refrigeration. How could our bodies have been set up for thousands and thousands of years of eating these small meals when we didn't have that kind of access? So that's not what we're set up for. Lack of exercise and too many calories is the reason people are obese. That's one of the really, really big myths. Somebody will say, oh yeah, all you have to do is just exercise more and all the weight goes away. It's fun to go to a bunch of 24-hour fitness. I know a whole bunch of different gyms out there. I don't know why I picked that one. I guess because my wife's a member of that one, but it's no different than any of them. You go in and you walk up to a bunch of men or women that are busy sweating bullets on a treadmill, on a stair stepper, on some bicycle, whatever it is. And you walk up to a bunch of them and you go, come here often? I'm doing a little study. I won't put your name in it. Just want to ask some questions if you don't mind. Usually they don't mind if you're being nice and not nasty. I come here 3 times a week or twice a week. How long have you been coming? One person will say 3 years, one person says 5 years, one person will say 10 years. How much weight have you lost? None. They haven't changed their diet. Diet is 90%, exercise is 10%. Anybody that tells you opposite doesn't know the research, and so there's nothing wrong with exercise. It's just the diet change helps your body lose the weight, not the exercise. That's just a little addition. And that very few people need to avoid wheat. There's another big myth that, not too many people have celiac disease, and that's the only people that need to avoid wheat. Everybody else is fine. Gluten doesn't hurt them. We're going to go over that. That is totally untrue. The celiac test only catches 20% of the people that react to wheat. And gluten-free foods are always healthier than foods with gluten in them. And that can easily be very, very misleading. So we'll go over some of that. So there are a couple of quotes that I found that I really, really like because they give you the reason that these myths are perpetuating. That's one of the really, really good ones. What gets us in trouble is not what we don't know. It's what we know for sure that just ain't so. And that's the problem. I'll have medical doctors that'll take my 10-week course. And they'll come up to me after week 5 or 6 or 7. And they'll go, the stuff that you're saying that like we were taught in medical school, that's correct. And when you said it was wrong and the research isn't there, I didn't believe you. So I said, okay, I'll do something I never did when I was in medical school. I'll get on the National Institutes of Health, we'll go to PubMed, and we'll take a look at the research studies. Darn, you were right. The research that they taught us isn't there, and the stuff that you said is there, and we were taught wrong. That's really sad. I go, yeah, it's very sad. Welcome to my world. And here's a little sort of tiny myth. everybody thinks that was a Mark Twain quote. And that's partly because of Al Gore's big movie from years ago, An Inconvenient Truth. He had it up on the entire screen, and it had Mark Twain under it. There are lots of other people who have it on their website. Mark Twain. I'm a fanatic for truth. That's one of the things that makes me stay busy without advertising. And so before I put it up on my website, I called up the Mark Twain Institute. I said, can you connect me to somebody to check on a quote that's supposedly Mark Twain's quote? Certainly, we'll send you to our historian. They send you the historian, and I said, I've got a quote, and I just want to know whether it's Mark Twain's. He said, I probably know which one it is, and it probably isn't, because we get so many calls on it, but what's the quote? And I read him that quote. He said, no, that's not Mark Twain, of course. There is no Mark Twain. It's a fictitious character anywhere. It has to do with Samuel Clemens. But the point is, he said, they never even used a contraction. So this the fact that ain't is in it automatically wasn't. But no, nothing like that was ever said. And so many people thought it was, we started looking for it in all the different quote books. And we found something very similar that we think it was changed over from, and that was somebody named Josh Billings, but it's not Mark Twain. And then there's another one. It is impossible for anybody to begin to learn what he thinks he already knows. And that's really the same, and it's very, very similar. I mean, if you believe you know something, then it's very difficult to teach you that you're wrong. And that's one of the reasons that all this stuff perpetuates. You know, a very standard term that a lot of my patients tell me their doctor said when they said something to the doctor said, where'd you get your MD from? Oh, come on, really? I mean, is it true that if you have the right types of initials after your name, I don't care, MD, PhD, whatever it might be, that as you start to say something wrong, it automatically becomes right? No, sorry. If a 5-year-old says something that's correct, and somebody with 3 PhDs believes something otherwise, then the man with 3 PhDs is still wrong. So, very important for us to understand that if somebody puts you down because you know the truth, don't argue with them. They're not going to believe you. Don't bother. You can say, I'm just going to agree to accept the fact that you can keep on thinking something that's wrong. And if you ever want to look into it thoroughly, call me. I'll tell you some places to look. But there's no sense in arguing. I can argue with them. I can tell them exactly what's going on. You can't. So it's not worth it. And Upton Sinclair, it is difficult to get a man, and of course today we can't use that word, right? Today we would have to say person. It was difficult to get a man to understand something when his salary depends on his not understanding it. And so if somebody is a research scientist for some big organization that promotes, the use of fluoride in water or something else that's been proven to have no benefits whatsoever, just harm, then if they're being paid to promote that, their salary depends on them saying that, and don't go look into things that are going to show you're wrong because, you start saying that, you're going to get fired. So that's just another good quote. So we're going to cover them in order, beginning with saturated fats. Tens of thousands of years, we ate saturated fats. We had almost no heart disease. And people will say, well, yeah, but we only live to be like 20 or 30 years old. That's another one of the myths that's being perpetrated on us. And that's because they're using the word average. The average, age of death, the average height, the average... Okay, so if I have one person who dies a day after childbirth and one person who lives to be 100 before they pass away, the average time of death of those two individuals is 50. 100 plus 0 divided by 2 is 50. So neither of them live to be anything near 50, but the average of those two is 50. The word average allows anybody that's doing research a way to completely mislead everybody listening to it. And this happens over and over and over and over again. So you go back to 1800s, the average life expectancy, that meant all the people that they had taken a look at when they died at different ages. What was the average? The average was 40. Why was the average 40? We didn't have indoor plumbing. We had a lot of people that died in childbirth because we didn't know what we were doing. Somebody would have an accident and bleed to death because nobody knew you could apply direct pressure and call the paramedics and they could do something. All sorts of different things that had nothing to do with overall general health, or even that had anything to do with how good our diets were. Because sometimes some of the foods back then were better than some of the genetically modified foods now. And they take the average, and it was 40. And I throw a chart up in my course where you take a look and it says, I think it was 1890, average life expectancy at birth was 40 years old. And in 2000, let's say 10, average life expectancy maybe was 75. So when you were born, this person, you think maybe they're going to live to be 75, that person 40. Then you take a look at the same people at age 10. Well, at age 10, you've already used up 10 of those years. So instead of living another 75 years, you expect to live another 65 years. And you take a look at 2010 or 2005, and sure enough, the person that had expected another 75 years now has expected another 65 years. Makes total sense. Now we take a look at the person born in 1890. When they were born, their life expectancy was 40. 10 years later, it should be 30. No, now it's 50. Because they got rid of a bunch of things that kids die of when they, fall and break something and bleed to death. And it keeps going up instead of down until you take a look at some people that are, let's say, 55, and both of their life expectancies of how long they expect to live from that point, it's about the same. So again, the word average was used, and still being used, to completely misinform us about all sorts of different things. Plus, my little note there, wild animals fed themselves. If we were eating beef, if we were eating venison, if we were eating whatever, turkey, if it was wild animals, because everybody didn't have these farms and dairies, we weren't raising everything. Animals in the wild eat what they're supposed to eat. None of them go to the feed store and say, sell me a bag of chicken feed. They eat worms and insects and grass. And the cattle, they don't go to the feed store and say, send me a trough of corn and grains. They just eat the grass and weeds they're supposed to. And when an animal eats what it's supposed to eat, we are animals, so that includes us. When an animal eats what it's supposed to eat, it's a healthy animal. So when you're eating grass-fed beef, grass-fed lamb, wild-caught turkeys, you're eating a healthy food. When you're eating the ones that we've raised, because we give it whatever will make it get fat faster and do everything right, and of course they do everything wrong, we have a problem. And so the more we do to make it so that they can produce more food for us in less time, by giving them whatever gets them fat faster, by giving them hormonal injections to make them grow faster than they're supposed to. Now they're growing so fast they're getting sick all the time. That's okay, we'll put antibiotics in their food. All those different things, and it's nothing like the stuff we used to eat a long, long time ago, because the wild animals were feeding themselves. So our lifespan actually was fairly similar if you look at it correctly. Older, mostly retired cardiologists. I've met a number of cardiologists, some retired, some not, in their 80s and 90s. They just love what they're doing so much. Some of them are still working. And they said, for the first decades of my practice, we didn't see heart disease. Heart disease started when all these newfangled vegetable fats started getting pushed on the public, and we started being told, you don't want to eat animal fats. You don't want to eat tropical fats like coconut oil and palm oil. No, those are saturated fats. You want to eat canola oil and soybean oil, and sunflower oil. And as that stuff started to come in, heart disease started going up. Well, we now know that those things cause heart disease. But we is not the public, and we is not the medical profession. So it's a little bit sad. So, for a multi-decade study that was done by the Centers for Disease Control. So the CDC decided, a number of decades ago, we are now educating the public. We, not being the CDC, we being the medical profession, dietitians, the media, which are simply parroting back what the dietitians and the medical profession was saying. We're now telling people, you need to eat lots of whole grains, you need to eat lots of fresh fruit, you need to keep your diet low in fat and low in animal products. Let's see what that does over the next 20 or 30 years. That'll be really interesting. And I'm thrilled that the CDC, one of our government agencies that I otherwise don't love, decided to do this study. So they started this study, and for a few decades, they wanted to see what actually is happening. And what were we being told in general? Eat more fruit, eat more whole grains, eat a low-fat diet, avoid saturated fats, reduce meat. And now we have this beautiful study. And this study is on the CDC's website. It's still there. It's listed under obesity trends in the U.S. Somebody can go to their website in the search box and put in obesity trends in the U.S. And you can still find these slides there unless they've taken them down. The first year was 1985. And all of the doctors in all the states haven't been reporting yet. So there are a lot of them which are white, which just says, we haven't received any data. We can't tell you anything, so they leave them white. So white is no data. Light blue is where 10% or less of the adult population was listed as overweight or obese. And the slightly darker blue was 10 to 14% of the adult population was listed as, again, overweight or obese. And this is a big surveillance system by CDC. And so we start going from year to year. And for the first few years, the year is red on the top, 1986, 1987. First few years, really what's happening is the states are reporting. They're getting in and doing what the government has asked them to do, and they're sending in the figures. And so the whites are going away, and we're getting a better idea of what's going on. And then we get to 1991, and a couple of the states that had 10 to 14% of the adult population being overweight or obese jumped up to 15 to 19%. And so we added another color. They added another color, a darker blue. And we get more darker blues coming in, and almost every state is reporting. And you'll notice that the below 10% is gone. There are no longer any states in which less than 10% of the adult population is overweight or obese. It's always over that because people have been listening, and they did research. They actually did lots and lots of different questionnaires with people. Are you listening to your doctor? Are you eating a low-fat diet? Are you eating less meat? Are you eating more fruits? Are you trying to eat some more whole grains? And overwhelmingly, yes, we're doing that. And this is what's happening because of that. So 1995, 1996, we need another category. 1997, 3 states popped in 20% or higher of the adult population being overweight or obese. 1998, and no state ever goes backwards. That's really sad. You can't, and that's because they're all listening to the same experts, the people that are saying things wrong for political reasons or for agricultural, monetary reasons. So 1999, 2000, we have one holdout in Colorado. Maybe they're doing so much exercise in Colorado, people are a little bit healthier. So they held out for a while. They're now the only state left that's 10 to 14%. Everybody else. And we need another category. Equal or greater than 25% of the adult population being overweight or obese. Really scary. It keeps on going. 2002, 2003. And this is all government research. This has nothing to do with me or anybody else. This is the Centers for Disease Control. And we keep on going. 2005, we now have 30%. We got a couple states that came in at 30%. 2007, finally, Colorado jumped from 10 to 14 to 15 to 19. 2009, again, Colorado's the lone holdout. And 2010, Colorado went away also. And then they decided that they didn't like having the 0 to 10 and the 10 to 14. Because that made it look like at some point there were states that had that, which of course there were. But they didn't want the public to know that. So they got rid of the 0 to 10 and the 10 to 14, and they began with 15 to 20. So it would look like there weren't that many things that had happened. No. But if we take a look from the beginning, we know that lots of stuff happened, all in the wrong direction. That was 2011. And it's 2012. And then in 2013, they said, it doesn't look good. It doesn't look good. I mean, all those colors are we need a green. Green will make the chart look better. So let's make it so that, and they said below 20%, which is really a lie, because it's 15 to 20%. Below 20% is like saying, anywhere from nobody to 20. No, it was 15 to 20. So again, they're trying to make it look better. So we've got green, which is ridiculous, especially where the numbers are over there. And 2014, and even the green is almost going away, even though they ridiculously made the green a silly number. So that long CDC study is the best example we have of what our low-fat, high-starch, and high-fruit diet has done to the public in the United States. And yes, more people are doing that, and we are getting the benefit. I don't think anybody that knows anything about health would call it a benefit, but that's what happens. So the question is, are there any books that have been written that go over which fats are good, which fats are bad, what maybe should we be eating? And there are two really, really good ones. The Big Fat Surprise by Nina Teicholz. I interviewed her. The interview's on my website. She's an investigative journalist in New York, and it's the best book on fats and oils that's ever been written. When I read that book, I went, oh my, I need to talk to this woman, interview her, and put an interview on my website. She looked at every single research study. She interviewed a whole bunch of the experts and wrote a book on how we managed to get so misled that our health is being destroyed by people still today telling us that meats are bad for you, low-fat diet is good for you, when there isn't any research that says that, except a couple of tiny studies that were purposely done wrong, and she goes over it. And then I met Jack Wolfson, who's a physician and a cardiologist. His dad was also a cardiologist and died of heart disease. And I met him because we were both lecturing at the same clinical nutrition conference one year. We had a very good conversation, took a look at his book, bought a copy, and said, I'm going to add it to my short recommended book list. Paleocardiologist, A Natural Way to Heart Health. So those are two very good books, and there are lots more. Those are just a couple. I gave you some books on your handouts as well.
Can we ask questions?
Write your question down, because I want to answer it, but I don't want to not make it through my slides. So I absolutely want to answer questions. Write it down so you won't forget it. So what about avoiding foods that contain cholesterol? That's another myth that we've been told for a long, long time. Cholesterol causes heart disease. It's never been proven. As a matter of fact, it's been disproven. But your doctor knows it, and he or she knows it even though it's not true, which is too bad. And we're going to go specifically over cholesterol at the end if we have time, because I don't go over it specifically here. But what I did is I put up a bunch of the better books, many of which are written by MDs and PhDs and MD PhDs. And I know a couple of these, actually. The one on the left, Cholesterol is Not the Culprit, Fred Kummerow. I spoke to him last year, just after his 101st birthday. He has lots of eggs for breakfast every day. And the others are all great books. And just to let you know, so I don't forget, let me write down where she told me it was going to be. You have a room that's called the Life Enhancements Room. I made a color copy of all these slides, stapled them together and gave them to Natalie. She said it'll be in the color enhancements room. So again, over the next few weeks, I intend to grab this up and see if I can get it up on my website. But she has a copy of all these slides that you can flip through if you want to copy down particular titles or names. So this is the United States Department of Agriculture. And every 5 years, they write an advisory report, as it says there, to the Secretary of Health and Human Services and the Secretary of Agriculture. And the 2015 advisory report, when it was written, came out, and because of, and it was, I think it was maybe 100 pages long. I have the whole thing on my website, on my computer. But one of the things that they said, this wasn't covered. So ABC, NBC, CBS, Fox, all the big news places, Harvard and Yale Medical School, all the places that needed to see this, didn't come out. Fantastic report, didn't come out because too much money was being made on drugs going against this. So what did they say? They said cholesterol. Previously, the Dietary Guidelines for Americans recommended that cholesterol intake, this is in your food, be limited to no more than 300 milligrams a day. The 2015 Dietary Guidelines Advisory Committee will not bring forward this recommendation because available evidence shows no appreciable relationship between consumption of dietary cholesterol and your serum cholesterol level. This is consistent with conclusions of the American Heart Association and the American College of Cardiology report. And it gives their actual report, the journal, the page number. Cholesterol is not a nutrient of concern for overconsumption. So this was looked at and came out, and because there was so much money on the wrong side of this issue, and you didn't hear it. It will be interesting to see what happens, because this is every 5 years. So they're currently working on the 2020 Dietary Guidelines. And I've gotten a couple of emails about, what's possibly going to be in there. We'll see what happens. So next myth, supplements are a waste of money. There are definitely some nutritional supplements, absolutely, which any respected nutritional biochemist or research scientist that really knows what's going on, or a properly educated doctor or a properly educated dietitian. I mean, you can't put down an entire field. That's just ridiculous. You know, there are always going to be some people that go, I want more information. I mean, I'm one of them. I spend $10,000 to $15,000 every single year going to scientific conferences, listening to the clinical experts that are doing research that may or may not be accepted for publication because of what they say isn't what the journal wants you to hear. It doesn't come out. And so I want to hear it from the people. And sometimes I'm one of the people lecturing on the clinical evidence and things I find in my office with my patients. So absolutely there are some products out there that are just a waste of money. Generally, it applies to pharmaceutically made vitamins. So we have vitamin supplements that are made by pharmaceutical companies, such as Centrum Silver. We've got vitamins that are made by nutrient and health companies, and there's maybe 100 or 200 of those. And there's bad and good everywhere. I mean, there really isn't any occupation. I mean, make a list in your head of occupations, you know. Painter and flooring person, carpenter, house builder, electrician, plumber, naturopath, clinical nutritionist, doctor. There isn't any occupation that I can think of in which the majority of the people that do that are fantastic at what they do. Any occupation you pick, my guess, and this is just my guess, is that probably between 5 and 10%, and some it might be less, are really good at what they do. And they may have graduated right next to the person that's horrible with the same degree. So when somebody says, oh, but I'm a licensed plumber. Oh, but I'm an electrical contractor. Oh, I've got MD after my name. Oh, that doesn't mean anything. That just means that they met those requirements and got that. And you know, the joke was always, what do you call, I haven't heard this joke recently, but it's appropriate now. What do you call the doctor who just barely squeaked by and passed everything and got and graduated medical school? Doctor. That's what you call him. And I add to that, and if that particular man or woman investigated and found out, like some of the doctors that have taken my 10-week course, that, oh my goodness, an awful lot of stuff that we were taught is actually wrong, and decided to go out and learn a whole bunch of other stuff on clinical nutrition and environmental health and everything else, they might now be way better than the person who graduated valedictorian. Everything is what we know, and that can change all the time. So, the pharmaceutical vitamins such as Centrum Silver are ones which really no good nutritional-oriented professional would recommend because they've got a bunch of things that don't belong in there, like FD&C food colorings and antifreeze. So we got FD&C blue 2 aluminum lake, FD&C red 40 aluminum lake, FD&C yellow aluminum lake, all the food, drug, and cosmetic acts, FD&C coloring agents. You can actually find, if you know where to look on the FDA website, where it lets you know how many parts per million of lead, mercury, arsenic, cadmium are allowed in each of those colors. So if somebody comes out with a new product and they want to color it, if they care about our health, which of course they don't, they care about their profits, they would never use an FD&C food coloring. You wouldn't find mouthwashes that are colored yellow, green, red, and it tells you which FD&C food coloring in there because they all have things in them that are bad for us. They would use carrot extract, beet extract, something else which would cost them a lot more money and not hurt us, but you won't see that. Nickel is sulfate. Nickel is not a necessary substance for the human body. Polyethylene glycol, that's antifreeze. That belongs in my car radiator, but it doesn't belong anywhere else. Aluminum is something that we're finding is causing lots of problems in lots of people, so I certainly don't want that in there. And so, again, that's the last time, a couple months ago, I grabbed a Centrum Silver, took a current photograph of it, scanned it, and highlighted some stuff. I have no financial interest in any pharmaceutical company or any holistic company or company that makes supplements, vitamins, anything like that. I carry in my office for my patients the ones I find work best. But I figured since I'm going to be at a retirement place where a lot of people would rather not take a lot of pills and that a liquid might be easier, I would just pick my favorite liquid and put it up there. And my favorite liquid is called Core Plus pH Balancer. That is only available direct from the manufacturer. They don't sell it, I've never seen it in stores. There may be some stores that carry, I have no idea. I mean, obviously I have it in my office with my patients. But the manufacturer is Mother Earth Labs. And their website is motherearthlabs.com. And it's a liquid, needs to be refrigerated, and the dose is half an ounce with breakfast and a half an ounce with dinner. And if somebody started taking that, because it brings in all sorts of things you're low in, and they said, I don't feel good when I'm taking this, then it's supporting your body's abilities too quickly. So you stop it for a day or two, you go back to feeling you're normal, and for those of you that are not, remember all of your measurements and cooking stuff, a half an ounce is equal to a measuring tablespoon. And there are 3 teaspoons in a tablespoon. So if you say, okay, I was taking half an ounce, that's a tablespoon twice a day. Let me stop for a couple of days. Let me go back and take a third of that dose. That would be a teaspoon. Let's try a teaspoon twice a day. Oh, I feel fine with that. Okay, I'm going to take a teaspoon twice a day for the first month. Then I'll try 2/3. I'll try 2 teaspoons twice a day. Wow, that feels fine. Try 3 teaspoons or a tablespoon. Don't feel as good. Okay, find a dose that works for you. That's fine. And after your body is working better, you'll probably be able to go up. We're all different. But don't ever take something that makes you feel bad. And sometimes it's because it's bad for you. Could be a drug, could be anything. Could be a food you're allergic to. Sometimes it's because it's great for you and it's helping your body do good things too fast. So stop it and try a lesser amount. If you're convinced the substance is good for you and it's making you feel bad, don't go, well, somebody I trust told me it was good for me. I'm just going to push through it. No, stop. Try a lower dose. All right, a myth. If you eat adequate calories in a well-balanced meal, you won't be deficient in any essential nutrients. This is still being taught to doctors today, and it's still being taught to RDs, registered dietitians today. The number of studies that have been done looking at this are 2 or 3. The number of studies that found it to be true are 0. So they looked at it, they took a whole bunch of people, they had them record exactly what they were eating every single day, they did all sorts of different analyses, and they went, wow, no matter what they were eating, no matter how healthy their diet was, every single one of those individuals had multiple deficiencies in trace minerals, minerals, and vitamins. And there's 2 reasons for that. One is because the food quality isn't very good anymore. And, if they were using the old heirloom, non-hybridized stuff that was healthy, instead of the things that they're making look good and produce more, but they don't care about its nutritional value, then maybe we would have less deficiencies. The second is we are exposed to all sorts of chemicals that never existed. I mean, all of the preservatives that are in your floor cleaner, your kitchen cleanser, your shampoo, your liquid soap, all those different things, they didn't exist 500 years ago. They were all made in the lab. So your body wasn't made and designed to be able to have your kidneys and your liver working well enough to clear those things out. And so they start causing all sorts of overloads. And your body says, I need more nutrients to handle that, and they aren't there. The second is the food. So one is the food isn't as good, and the second is we require more for our body to try and deal with all the stuff that's going on around it. Between those 2, they've never found anybody that didn't have multiple deficiencies. So they're still teaching this, but it's never been true. Total myth. Another myth is supplements are a waste of money. There's no science behind that, unless you don't understand what somebody has just told you doesn't mean what you think it means. So, for example, the last study that came out, and it was plastered all over the newspapers, and I start to wonder, who makes sure we all hear this? Is it the medical profession that wants us to stay sick? I hope not. I don't want to think that doctors want us to be sick. Is it the pharmaceutical companies that want us to stay sick? Well, they probably do want us to stay sick, but I don't know. But when something comes out, new study, and a long-term study, 20 years, and the people that took a multivitamin every day had no lower risk or rate of getting any of the different diseases they were looking at. So I only believe the research when I look at it, because I want to see what they looked at. So I immediately go to see where is the citation, what study was it done, what journal was it in, and I spend $15 to $20 and I buy the study. And I read it. And that particular one was a long study, N. Haynes, been going on for decades. And how did they determine who was taking a multivitamin to be able to see if they were healthy or not? And it was a questionnaire that went out a certain number of times a year. And one of the lines on the questionnaire said, do you take a multivitamin? Yes or no, 2 boxes, you get to check one off. Do you take a multivitamin? You're using that research to say multivitamins don't work? That's totally ridiculous. What multivitamin? appropriate for you, taking it what doses, for how long, how much of a garbage is that particular multivitamin, how many times did you forget to take it? I mean, you don't know anything. If we had drugs that got approved that way, they'd probably be killing 10 times more people than they already do. You can't do that. Research is, you're researching the substance. Is it a multivitamin? Okay, which one? What brand? Exactly what's in it? Everybody takes that particular multi. Everybody takes it in the way they've been told to. Is it twice a day? Is it 3 times a day? Is it once a day? They get a phone call, maybe once a month. Would you take a look at your chart that you were required to keep? And let me know about how many times a week do you forget it? All that stuff that gets done, then you know. But do you take a multivitamin? Yes or no? When you don't even know which one or anything about it? And then they say, oh yeah, the people that took a multi, they didn't have a lower risk of anything. It's useless research. It means nothing. But it's going to come out. We're all going to hear about it. So studies either use too low potency of a multivitamin. They were studied for too few years. They used an incorrect nutrient in some of the things that were in there. And therefore, what they found out is completely meaningless. This has happened many times with multis. It's happened with vitamin C. It's happened with vitamin E. And it just keeps on going. Doesn't stop. Keeps on going. The good research shows the exact opposite. So this was a study that was published in the Journal of Environmental and Molecular Mutagenesis. They tried to get it published in the big 3 medical journals, but the medical journals will not accept something that shows that a vitamin supplement worked better than all the drugs on something. Plus, in most medical science, this is very sad, they want only one item to be studied. So if you have a multi in which a couple of really smart nutritional biochemists said, let's take a look at what things humans or the animal we're going to study often don't have enough of, or that a little bit more might help them. And let's put those 5, 6, 8, 10, 15 different things together, make a multi, and do a study on it. You try to get that sent in and approved, and they go, oh, Dr. So-and-so or PhD so-and-so, you must not understand research. You can't study more than one thing at a time. And the doctor, Dale Bredesen, was a good example. He wrote a great book called The End of Alzheimer's. I highly recommend it. He tried to get a study done on humans with all the different nutrients that he had found were necessary in order to prevent different types of neurological and brain problems and often reverse some of it. And he'd done it in the lab. He wanted a human study. He said, Dr. Bredesen, don't you understand? You can only study one thing. He said, don't you understand? One thing won't do squat. And in the way I teach in my class, I go, so general contractor comes. They're going to build you a little additional, let's make it something small, a little storage unit. And you say, I'll give you as many screws as you want, but that's all you get. I can't build you a storage unit with screws only. Oh, okay, well, I'll make it nails only. No, that won't work either. Okay, I want a window in it. I'll make it glass only. No. How about wood only? No, we need nails, screws, wood, wall, shingles, etc., etc. Well, no matter how much I give you, doesn't matter. You need these other different things. Our body is way more complex. And we need all these different things. And if you're studying a nutrient, let's say you're studying vitamin E, and let's say the particular part of vitamin E, which could be alpha, beta, delta, or gamma tocopherol, let's say the particular part won't work if you're deficient in selenium, and they don't check your body's selenium level and replete up to where it should be all of the people in the study whose selenium is low, then when they give you the vitamin E and it doesn't work in all those people, they go, yeah, no, vitamin E doesn't do that. This is the kind of way that research totally fictitiously misleads us and misleads your doctor, who depends on being able to look at this research and say, well, yeah, I mean, if this vitamin's going to help, I'll give it to some of my patients, but all the research says it doesn't. And they don't understand nutritional biochemistry, so they don't understand why the research study wouldn't show that it worked, because they screwed up the study. All right. High enough blood level of vitamin D3, very important vitamin, super, super important vitamin. And by the way, we didn't always have clothing. If you go back in time far enough, we didn't have clothing. And we didn't have a doctor telling us, don't be out in the sun between 11 and 1. So people are out doing things all the time. And they developed a nice tan. They had large, good, excellent, safe levels of vitamin D and never had any problems. And now everybody is lathering on often cancer-causing sunscreens to protect them from something called the sun, which would help bring your vitamin D level up so you'd be less likely to get various different conditions of cancer. So high enough level of vitamin D. So this is a chart that was put together by some of the research scientists. And all they're looking at here is the level of vitamin D in nanograms per milliliter. And then they're looking at a bunch of different conditions. And they want to see how much a certain level of vitamin D will reduce your risk factor. Because it's going to vary. So let's pick one. Stress fractures. So if your vitamin D level is above 52, your risk of a stress fracture is 80% reduced. I'll take that. That sounds like a good idea. All right. Let's pick another one. Colon cancer. Again, you're going to get yourself a large reduction. And multiple sclerosis is up there. There's a whole bunch of them up there. But when your doctor runs the vitamin D level on you, the lab tells the doctor that the normal value for vitamin D in the human population in America is between 32 and 100. So when you come back at 14, he says, yeah, we need to raise your vitamin D, and he gives you some ridiculously stupid pill like 50,000 units of vitamin D, says take these for 6 weeks, they test it again, now it's fine. He said, okay, you're fine. No. Vitamins are used by your body every single day. If you haven't been on an AD, then that's your baseline. If they give you any amount they want, I don't care what it is, and then stop it, you will slowly go back down to your baseline. That's your level when you're not being supplemented with D. So you don't want to give somebody a huge amount and then stop it. You want to figure out how much to give them every day to bring it up to where it belongs and keep it there. And 32, they go, oh, you're at 32. You're normal. You're fine. I don't want to be normal. I don't want to be normal. It is currently normal in the United States to die of cancer, heart disease, complications of diabetes, or reactions to pharmaceutical drugs. None of those four, thank you. I don't want to be normal. I'd like to be abnormal. So if the normal amount is 32 to 100, where do I have to be abnormal in the healthy range? And it turns out the healthy range for vitamin D is around 52 to 80. So I make sure that I get all my patients' levels of vitamin D up to between 52 and 80 nanograms per milliliter. And I say that because if somebody happens to be listening to this recording after it's made and they're in a metric country, like Europe and Canada, they don't use nanograms per milliliter. They use nanomoles per liter, and the numbers are all different. But in America, I want people's levels to be between 55 and 80. And I will just slowly increase them. And the doctors don't understand the amount of D you take is not relevant. Your level is relevant. So some patient comes back in my office and says, yeah, my doctor said 5,000 units of D you're giving me? That's way too much. Did you explain to him that after you've been on it for 3 months and we checked your D, it was still too low? And therefore for you need more? He said, no, I don't like to argue with him. He just puts me down and says, where'd you get your MD? We can do. So again, I can't tell anybody where your vitamin D amount that your body would need to keep you between 55 and 80 is. I have no idea. Don't have a clue. I know for me it's 12,000 a day. I have people that it's 30,000 a day. I have people that it's 4,000 a day. I have no idea. So most people start at either 2,000 or 4,000 a day. It takes 3 months to slowly get to where that amount every day will hold you. You retest your vitamin D level and you see if it's in the right place. If it is, great. That's your amount. Keep taking it. Yeah, check it again once every couple of years to see if your need has changed and it's gone up or down. But you do that, and yeah, it brought me from 14 to 31. Okay, add another couple thousand. Try it again in 3 months until we get you where you belong, and then that's your number. All right. One recent study showed that keeping your vitamin D level high enough, which again, based on current research, is between 55 and 80, prevented the flu far better than any flu shot. And that one actually they sort of released a little bit. I heard a couple of my patients say, did you see that article? But I didn't ask them, did they find it on the internet? Did they find it on TV? Was it somebody on the radio? But vitamin D is very, very healthy for, very, very important for your immune system. Oatmeal, whole wheat, quinoa, brown rice, and all grains, I don't care which ones they are all made up predominantly from a substance called starch. Your body takes starch and converts it into blood sugar and triglycerides, neither of which you want more of. So starch is the enemy. The word carbohydrate should be thrown out. People should stop using the word carbohydrate. Because, and I usually in my class, I show a big chart of all sorts of different foods that I've taken pictures of. And so there'll be a piece of broccoli, and a piece of cauliflower, a piece of asparagus, and a bowl of rice, and a bowl of C&H cane sugar, and a muffin, and a piece of bread. What do all these things have in common? They're all 100% carbohydrate. So if a bag of sugar is 100% carbohydrate, and a bowl of rice is 100% carbohydrate, and a piece of broccoli and cauliflower and asparagus are 100% carbohydrate, then how does the word carbohydrate give any knowledge to the person listening to you when you say, I'm on a high or low carbohydrate diet? People come up to me in stores sometimes, and they recognize my face from the movies I've been on. They go, oh, you're the low carb guy. And I'm always trying to teach. So I say, the low carb guy? Huh. Why would I want to tell somebody not to eat broccoli, cauliflower, and asparagus? And they get this weird expression over their face because they knew what they were thinking, and that's not what I just said. But that's because they're misusing the word carbohydrate. So I don't want a low carb diet. I want a low starch, sugar, and alcohol diet. And I've given them a name that I actually got a registered trademark from our government. I call them all sabotage foods because they're sabotaging your body's ability to either hold your blood sugar level or give you long-term health, which most people want. They cause heart disease, cancer, diabetes, and fatty liver, and most of the fatty liver now is NAFLD. That's non-alcoholic fatty liver disease. Now, with all of the people being told that we need to eat lots of whole grains and lots of fruit, which are a really good way to get fatty liver, predominant cause of fatty liver is no longer alcohol. So most of the people that have fatty liver, it's non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, which I love to change over in people because when I change their diet and bring in the nutrients that'll help the liver clear it out real fast, usually the doctor, because I don't tell us, I'm a nutrition professional. Do not call me by the same term that you use for all the people that couldn't get you well. Do not call me doctor. And the doctors of my patients will often say, I've never seen fatty liver disease turn around that fast in anybody in my life. What does this guy have you on? And then when they start telling the doctor what I have them on, the doctor usually holds his or her hand up and says, stop, it's all wrong, but these lab numbers are great, so keep doing it. Because he'll say, well, I'm eating lots of eggs, and I have to have the yolk. I'm melting butter on top of my broccoli and cauliflower. I got rid of all the margarine. I stopped the whole grains. I'm eating beef, but it has to be grass-fed. I'm eating lamb, but it has to be grass-fed. And I'm cooking them in ghee and coconut oil. And the doctor's going, you're doing everything wrong, but all of your levels are going in the right direction. And the proper answer is, can I have this guy's name? So I can find out exactly what he's doing and try it on 2 or 3 other patients to see if it works on somebody else. That's the only thing I have against doctors. Because the doctors are just people. There are good doctors, bad doctors. But we need an open mind. Somebody, when they see something going in the right direction faster than they've ever seen before, the proper response is, I want to investigate this with some more people and see if it works with them too, which would mean I was taught wrong, and instead they go, well, I don't know, you're doing everything wrong, but I guess keep doing it. Wrong answer. All right, so before we ate so little fat and too little animal protein, and before most occupations were done just sitting in one place, which is mostly what we do these days, we were able to burn off that excess starch and sugar. We can't anymore. So, people that had these diets before, very, very different. So along with the nutrients, all the grains, as well as all the beans, which are much too high in starch, but beans do convert more slowly. So if you're going to have a starch on your plate, much better to be a bean than to be a sweet potato or a regular potato or a yam or rice or some grain, because the beans convert more slowly. They are much less bad for you. So you're much better off if you're going to have a starch having a bean, as long as it's not the bean that screws up all of your hormones. So I do not mean soybeans. All the others are fine. But not too much. Unless the meal contains large amounts of healthy fats, which will slow down the starch. Fats slow down starches. As long as we use the good fats, then we have a very, very good thing. And on my website, I have something called the Healthy Diet Challenge. And I also have a food pyramid that goes over, my food pyramid of the way things can be. Everything on my website is there for you to read, print out, all these things. I go to somebody's website, I see an article that I really like, and I go to capture it to print it out. And it says, warning, you can't capture it. This is copyrighted. Yeah, but I want to give it to somebody, so I have to use one of my special programs to capture what they don't want me to capture. Whereas on my website, everything is there for you. You can capture it. Most of them are PDFs. You can print the PDF out. You can take the video and download it and show it to somebody else because it's information. I want people to have it. So again, there is where I say, I've got my registered trademark there. I call them sabotage foods. And sabotage foods prevent long-term health. And we want long-term health. So we want to stay away from sabotage foods as much as we can and eat large amounts of the healthy fats. Doctors and dietitians are still being taught old information. So there are essential fats. Technically, they're called essential fatty acids. There are essential proteins, or the things that proteins are made of. Those are called essential amino acids. We only have 3 groups in the food compendium. We've got fatty acids, we've got proteins, and we've got carbohydrates. That's it. We've got air, we've got water, but those are not parts of the food compendium. So some of the fats are needed for long-term health. They are called essential fatty acids. Some of the proteins, or the amino acids in the proteins, are needed for long-term health. You have to have them or you will have problems. They are called essential amino acids. They have never found an essential carbohydrate up to this day. And when they figured that out, that there were no essential carbohydrates, because all of the nutrients that are in carbohydrates that we use could always be gained from either some herbivore that's eating them and we're eating the meat, or from some fat or from something else and we're getting the fat directly instead of the fat in the meat. They went, this is a pretty big planet. If there really aren't any essential carbohydrates, which there are not, then we should be able to find one population somewhere that never ate any carbohydrate for, let's say, 1,000 years, and they're still in perfect health. They found 2. The original Eskimos, which we now call Inuit, although the Eskimos don't like that term, they were on a block of ice. And when you're on a block of ice, you eat land-based and sea-based creatures and fish. You don't eat things that are growing through the ice because there isn't anything. And up until we went in there and started teaching them other stuff, garbage stuff, and they started eating things they shouldn't have eaten, they were in perfect health long term. They didn't have any of our issues, no cancer, all gone. And they were eating 0 carbohydrates of any kind, the good ones or the bad ones. And the Maasai in Africa, Maasai warriors, that eat raw red meat from the animals that they tend and from the animals that they kill, raw mostly, almost exclusively. Blood, that they eat a lot of the blood from the animals, and milk from the herds that they milked, nothing that grew out of the ground. And some of our original, I think it might have even been the Olympics, but some of our original long races, some of these warriors with no shoes were beating all of our people with their $300 sneakers on. Because they were in perfect health. So we know it's not there. That doesn't mean, I'm not telling you that broccoli and cauliflower and asparagus are bad for you, you shouldn't eat them. I'm just saying they're not essential. And all the people that say, well, you have to have some carbs, that is incorrect. It may not be a lie, because in order to say a lie, you have to know you're telling the fib. If you believe what you just said and it's completely wrong, then you're misinformed. And you're ignorant, which is the stronger word. But it's not a lie. Lying, you have to know you're lying. So a lot of these various different people that we think of as experts are not lying. They're wrong. All right. Huge percentage of type 2 diabetics would no longer require drugs if they change their diet with the help of a good clinical nutritionist, naturopath, holistic physician. I don't care who. I don't care who has the information. But if you bring up the good fats and make sure there's adequate animal protein and get rid of the starch, sugar, and alcohol, the blood sugar normalizes for the right reasons. And some of the best books on a correct anti-diabetic diet to accomplish this are The Blood Sugar Solution, as well as Eat Fat, Get Thin by Dr. Mark Hyman. He's an MD that's looked into this and has his stuff right, which is great. He did a very good job. Dr. Bernstein's Diabetes Solution, another MD who did a very, very good job. Primal Fat Burner by Nora Gedgaudas, who I know. She did another really good job. All of these give you a really, really healthy diet. And my book, because people said, why don't you write a book? So I finally wrote a book, Abundant Health in a Toxic World. Now, very, very important. Very, very, very important. People with any type of diabetes should never make these healthy diet changes if they're not testing their blood sugar at least 3 times a day. Because if you have drugs that are pushing your sugar down to where it should be, where your diet is holding it in the wrong place. And all of a sudden, your diet becomes a healthy diet, and it regulates your blood sugar correctly, and you don't need to push it down, but the drugs are still pushing it down. All of a sudden, now you're going to be going to the hospital passing out because your blood sugar is way too low, because the drugs, which are no longer needed at that dose, are still pushing, and your diet has now regulated it. So anytime somebody wants to do that, you have to be testing your blood sugar, and either, if your doctor has taught you how to regulate your drugs as your diet changes, then you might be able to do it yourself. If not, you got to call him or her up and say, look, I'm going to work on really making my diet healthy. I've been told that my diet is going to start regulating my blood sugar, and so when I start testing and my blood sugar is going down too low, how would you like me to reduce this drug or that drug? Because I don't know what anybody's on, whether it's glucophage or insulin or whatever. There's all sorts of different possibilities. But you need to be able to know when it gets regulated by what goes in your mouth, which is the proper way, then the drugs are going to have to change. And that's just what I said. This is because a super healthy diet will rapidly do such a good job of regulating your blood sugar that your physician or you or whoever will quickly need to lower or eliminate the blood sugar medications, or it's going to be pushing it down too low. Super Healthy Diet is on my webpage, and I call it my Healthy Diet Challenge. And I think on the right side of my homepage, there's something that just says additional resources, and there's a drop-down menu, and one of the things says Healthy Diet Challenge, and you can print it out. So what's wrong with eating lots of fresh fruit? Well, we didn't have planes, boats, trains, trucks, cars, all these different things. And so nobody could bring us fruit from some other state or some other country these days where it's ripe. So we could only eat fruit while it was in our area and at the time of year that particular fruit ripens. That's an average of anywhere from 6 to 12 weeks a year. And for the rest of the entire year, nobody could get fruit. That amount of fruit didn't usually cause a problem. Now, we can bring fruit in from all sorts of different countries where it's going to be around and ripe when we want it. They can store it and then gas it to make it look ripe. They can freeze it and send it to us frozen. They can can it. They can make it into jams and jellies and all these different things. And now we can eat fruit all year long. And the body was never designed to handle that much fruit. So, that's a big, big, big problem. That quantity originally was not enough to cause diabetes. Plus, we're outdoors burning it off. Now we're not. So, once the sugar, which has been shown to cause insulin, is one particular one, is fructose. So that one sugar, fruit sugar, although fruit actually has more than one type of sugar in it, fructose, has been shown to cause insulin resistance. The other word for insulin resistance is type 2 diabetes. And they've started putting massive amounts of this because we think it's healthy. It's natural sugar. I love the word natural. It's my favorite. Natural. Oh, wow. Let's see. Lead is natural. Mercury is natural. Arsenic is natural. Cobra venom and rattlesnake venom are natural. Natural it has no meaning. That's irrelevant in most cases. But the amount of fructose we now consume is huge. So it's high in all fruit. It's very high in fruit juices because they've taken all the fiber and the skin and everything else that would have slowed it down a little bit and thrown it away and just give you the sugar water. So it's really high and it will get into your body much faster. It's massively high in high fructose corn syrup and date sugar, and it's even higher in agave nectar. Agave nectar is the highest fructose substance you can get in the health food store, and that's being used in all these different confections and cookies and cakes and fudge because, sweetened with agave nectar, natural. Natural doesn't mean healthy. People need to understand that natural does not mean healthy. It does its damage without converting to blood sugar. So a lot of people, their doctors will say, fruit's fine for you. Fructose doesn't raise your blood sugar. No, it does raise your blood sugar, but not the one that you're testing. Because fructose is a sugar, and your fructose level goes up. But they're only testing blood glucose. They don't get to see that your fructose level is spiking, because they're only testing blood fructose, and fructose does its damage without turning to glucose. So it's the one sugar that isn't being monitored because the test we do doesn't look at fructose. Nobody's looking at blood fructose level. So the healthiest sweeteners. Best three are stevia, which is the single most mispronounced word in the health food store, because everybody thinks it's stevia. And of course, however you pronounce it, it's the same thing, doesn't matter. But it actually comes from the Stevia rhodioidiana plant. And so the substances in it that are super, super sweet are steviosides and rhodioidians. And it is stevia. Yacoan syrup comes from a root that has some sweet-tasting fiber in it. Lohan berry is the monk fruit extract. The next best, which is not quite as good, but seem to be fine for most people, if you don't take too much of them, you get diarrhea, are erythritol, xylitol, and Lecanto. And if you type the word sweetener into the search box in my website, you'll get a talk I did called Sweeteners, Starches, and Alcohol, and it goes over all that in much more depth, because don't have time to here. Toxic sweeteners. Toxic sweeteners are made in the laboratory. Our bodies do not know what to do with these laboratory-made alien molecules. They have no idea what to do with them. They raise our risks of lots of different conditions, and these are all the toxic sweeteners. And I don't care whether it's amino sweet, NutraSweet, equal aspartame, neotame, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. These are all laboratory-made, and people will generally use them either to lose weight, in which 2 massive studies prove they do not help you do, or in order to have something sweet that doesn't raise their blood sugar because they're diabetic. But the healthy ones also don't raise your blood sugar, and they're not cancer-causing or neurological disease-causing, or things like aspartame, which of course has been shown in many people to cause seizures, to destroy brain tissue, just as bad, if not worse, than MSG. In the right kind of country, they wouldn't be legal based on the research that's done on them. Good references include one documentary, Sweet Misery, A Poisoned World, and you can probably find that DVD somewhere in a library or buy it online or whatever. Great documentary DVD movie. A fantastic book on aspartame called While Science Sleeps, A Sweetener Kills. And a really, really good book that Joe Mercola wrote called Sweet Deception, where he's going over all the artificial sweeteners. And again, I'm going to have all this available for you, plus a full set of these slides is already in the Life Enrichment Room. Red meat causes cancer. Cultures that eat lots of healthy red meat, healthy meaning the animals were eating what they should be eating, do not have higher cancer rates. Their cancer rates are just as good as or lower than other people's. Because if the animals are eating the right food, then they become an anti-inflammatory meat. It's fascinating. Most people know omega-3s. Omega-3s are the fats that are anti-inflammatory, and we get them from sardines, and we get them from salmon. It's not quite enough, so most people are better off getting some additional ones in fish oil liquids or fish oil capsules or cod liver oil. There's 500% more omega-3 fats in grass-fed, grass-finished beef and lamb than when it was eating grains. 500% more. So you're eating an anti-inflammatory meat instead of a pro-inflammatory meat when you get meat that says grass-fed and grass-finished or grass-fed birth to death. Slightly better studies separated the beef and the lamb, but they're still including hot dogs, hamburgers, and once you're grinding stuff up, we don't know what kind of garbage they're putting in there to extend it. If you have a steak or a lamb chop or something, I know what I'm looking at. If I'm looking at a hamburger or a hot dog, I don't know what was in there. I have no idea. If I ground the meat up and made the hamburger, I know. But if I bought something or it's in a restaurant, I don't have a clue. So for us to be healthy, the animals we eat, they had to be healthy. And people don't understand that. One more step. If eating healthy keeps us healthier, okay, it does, then what we eat, it had to be eating healthier, or we're eating something unhealthy, and that's not a way to keep us healthy. So this just came out in the New York Times just in the last few weeks, and a group of scientists, and they published it in the Annals of Alternative Medicine in October 2019. A group of scientists took a look at all of the studies that they've been screaming at us for the last 20 years about why we need to stay away from red meat. All of them. And they said that research is so bad that it never should have been published, and they never should have talked to people and say, this means we need to eat less red meat. And so it came out in the Times, it came out in 3 or 4 other different places, and of course, the organizations that are still telling people to stay away from it, like the American Heart Association, they went, this is horrible, you never should have put this out, don't you know you're going to be hurting people? Are you listening, scientists? Are you listening, doctors? If the research was bad and it doesn't show that, then we're hurting people by telling you to stay away. So they get everything mixed up. So a lot of people were up in arms when these scientists looked at all the studies and said this research is very poor and we don't need to be telling people to stay away from red meat. I partly agree and partly disagree. We need to tell people that they need to understand the difference between grass-fed and grain-fed, because one is way different than the other. All right, humans are omnivores, sheep and cattle are pasture-grazing herbivores, so in order for cattle and sheep to remain healthy and be healthy for us to eat, they have to graze on green grass in open pastures, never be given hormones and growth stimulants, never be given antibiotics in their feed, not be finished for the last 60 to 90 days on grain to fatten them up, even though they had grass beforehand. So you want grass-fed and grass-finished. If all it says is grass-fed, you need to ask a question. Was it grass-finished also? Oh, no, we don't have any of that in stock. Okay, goodbye. Or, oh, this is grass-finished also. It's the one with the green dot on it. Okay, you need an additional question. And, of course, not be overcooked or cooked in unhealthy fats like canola oil, soy oil, cottonseed oil, corn oil, vegetable oil. Because the healthy fats, there are much fewer healthy fats. The healthy fats are butter from grass-fed cows, ghee or clarified butter from grass-fed cows, organic coconut oil, organic palm fruit oil, olive oil if it's never, ever, ever had sex. So it's got to be extra virgin olive oil. And most of the olive oil in the United States has now been proven not to be extra virgin olive oil, even though it says so on the label. Big study. 70% of our extra virgin olive oil is not extra virgin olive oil. And they're not going after any of the manufacturers and pulling them off the market. My favorite olive oil places, number one, is The Olive Press, which is a website. They check all their suppliers. Any olive oil you buy from The Olive Press is legitimate extra virgin olive oil. And a specific California brand, which I like a lot, is called Bariani. Bariani, Bariani olive oil. Fantastic quality. So for more myths, if you go to my website, and then you go to the area that I list as in search of unknown facts, because that's what they are. To me, myths are unknown facts. They're factual, but everybody knows something else. So I want to teach people what all these unknown facts are, so I decided to come up with a cute title, and on my website it's called In Search of Unknown Facts. I have a long list of unknown facts and references of where you can go to get more information, because I don't ever want anybody to believe just me. I want you to have plenty of other experts you can go to in the field that will also back up the same things I've been telling you. Why is chicken not healthier than beef and lamb? Very easy. Because I told you, in order for something to be healthy, it has to have eaten what it's supposed to eat. And sadly, unless you have somebody that is a hunter and goes and hunts wild chickens, wherever they may be. I mean, I know there's wild ducks and wild turkeys. I'm not sure where wild chickens are. They're mostly a domesticated bird. But unless you can get wild chickens, they weren't eating what they're supposed to eat. But we can in the health food stores and in even some of the other stores. A couple of the regular markets and Trader Joe's, they have grass-fed beef. They have grass-fed lamb. You might have to call and find out, is it grass-finished also? I'll make a phone call. I'll check that. But I can't find any birds, any chicken, which was out eating what it's supposed to eat. It won't get fat fast enough. Plus, they've hybridized them to death to make them get fat much, much faster than they're supposed to. And if you were to see the way they were raised now, it would really bother you a lot. So unless you're a hunter, you can't find birds which are eating their species-specific diet. But like I said, you can get the other ones. In addition, overcooking reduces nutrition. And in order to make sure that nobody's going to get salmonella or E. coli or anything from the chicken, generally USDA and others say you want to cook chicken to 170 degrees Fahrenheit. That is going to destroy some of the more heat-unstable amino acids in the chicken. Whereas nobody ever gets sick, most people don't realize this, nobody ever gets sick from undercooked steak, undercooked roast, and undercooked lamb chops, or undercooked lamb shank. Every time somebody gets sick from undercooked red meat, it's always ground. So it's hamburger, lamb burger, turkey burger, it's ground. That's because they took something in which the only place there could have been a bacteria that wasn't good for us was on the outside of the meat. Can't get inside. So if you cook it for 30 seconds on each side, and the inside is still cold, you killed all the bacteria. But if you grind it into a hamburger, now the bacteria is everywhere. Now you got to cook it all the way through. So if you go to the best restaurants anywhere on the planet, I don't care whether in Europe or the United States, they serve aged beef could be hanging in their walk-in refrigerator for 60 days. If you say, fine, I'll take the aged beef, I'll take the aged ribeye, make it medium well or well done. Some of them will throw you out because that's not the way you eat good beef. It should be rare or medium rare. Nobody ever gets sick. They always get sick from ground meat. So we can't do that with the chicken, but we can do that with the steak. So grass-fed, birth to death, beef and lamb that isn't overcooked is much healthier for us than the birds. This is a certified cage-free bird enclosure. Most people don't realize what cage-free means. Cage-free means you've got 30,000 birds cramped into a large barn. And as long as it isn't one or two birds in a little cramped cage that will only fit one or two birds, if it's zillions of birds in a large enclosure, no matter how cramped they are, that's cage-free USDA definition. So every time you see cage-free on chickens or eggs, that's where they're being raised. If you see free range, that means that there had to be an opening that they were allowed to go out if they wanted to for a portion of the day. But if all the food and water are inside and it's a little warm outside and the temperature is maybe a little bit better inside, they might never have ever gone out during their entire life cycle. If you want eggs, for example, from healthy chickens, the box has to say two things on it. The only ones I'll buy. And there are many brands, as long as it says either pastured or pasture-raised and organic. I wanted to say pastured or pasture-raised because they are raised out in the pasture. It's not like they have a choice of where they're going. That's where they are. Pastured or pasture-raised and organic. If you can't get organic, at least get GMO-free, but they can still have pesticides and herbicides on them. So I really want pastured or pasture-raised and organic. Many small meals myth. The reason that came out, we should eat lots of small meals. We shouldn't eat big meals during the day. That's because what happened was the dietitians and the doctors were taught that fat is bad for us. And so if fat is bad for us, people go on a low-fat diet. But fat is what keeps us satiated. Fat is what makes it so that we don't need to eat something soon. So if you end up eating a meal that doesn't have enough fat in it, you will be hungry way, way faster than a meal that does have enough fat in it. As a matter of fact, if you eat a perfect meal in every way, except that it contains a sabotage food, the sabotage food makes you hungry an hour and a half to 2 hours earlier. So if you had 3 eggs, and you wrote down what time did I finish eating, and when do I start to get hungry? And then the next day you had the same 3 eggs, but you added a piece of toast and butter. So you're eating more food. You'll be hungry sooner. Because the toast is starch, and it sabotages the good food's ability to have held you long enough. So sabotage foods, even if everything else is good, foul you up and push you in the wrong direction. So that's what started. Everybody was eating low-fat, and low-fat you were getting hungry all the time. They didn't know what to say. So they went, well, you should be eating all the time. No, that's covering your butt. When you give people the wrong information, and now you have to tell them why it is you're getting hungry all the time. No, you're getting hungry all the time because they never should have told you that a low-fat meal was a good meal. Our ancestors ate lots of natural fats. They burned off the sugar and starch with outdoor activities and occupations, and they never ate all day long. They had no refrigeration. They had no canning. They had to go find things to eat. So we are not designed to eat all day long. Obesity is caused by low-fat diets and the consumption of starch, sugar, and alcohol, just like they showed in the CDC study. If every food a group of people ate, you take a bunch of people that would like to lose some weight, we say, okay, for the next 2 weeks, I want you to record everything you eat during the day. Write it all down. And then after that, you're going to spend 30 days where every single food that you normally eat that contains starch, sugar, or alcohol gets replaced with a fat or a fat and protein of the exact same calories. Every one of these people starts to lose weight and be less hungry during the day. They go, wow, how come my doctor didn't know that? They used to. In the 40s and 50s, the doctors were taught this. Now they're not. Why? It's got to be money. Celiac test should not be used. The celiac test needs to be thrown out. They need to just completely stop using the celiac test. Celiac test is a test that's supposed to see whether or not your body reacts to a plant protein called gluten. The problem is that 80% of the people that react to gluten will not test for celiac. It's only testing 1 or 2 of the molecules that you react to, and there are 24. So anytime somebody wants to know, should I be eating wheat, or would my body be a lot happier if I avoided it, you have to find a doctor that will run array number 3 from Cyrex Laboratories. That's the only test that's doing it correctly. Array number 3 from Cyrex Laboratories, and if any one of the 24 markers are elevated, your body reacts to wheat. And that appears to be about 80% of our population in America, because the wheat that we're getting has been hybridized so much that our body doesn't recognize it as food anymore. There is an old wheat, an ancient wheat, that a lot of people don't react to, called einkorn, E-I-N-K-O-R-N, but that's not what anybody is using here. Thyroid diseases often are caused by wheat. Multiple sclerosis and other autoimmune conditions are also caused by wheat. A lot of skin conditions are caused by wheat. Many memory issues are caused by wheat. And a huge slew of neurological conditions are caused by wheat. And because it takes wheat 6 weeks to clear out of your body. That means that, well, I don't eat it often. I'll have a little piece of something maybe once every 3 weeks. It never clears. If you would like to see whether you notice some improvements of not having wheat in your body, you have to go 2 full months, 60 days, of 0 wheat. And if you go to my website and type in wheat, a chart there will come up to show you all the places hiding. Because after 60 days, the first 6 weeks is clearing, and now there's 2 weeks when it's not there, and your body gets to do things it hasn't done in 50 years. So you need 60 days of wheat-free, and first you have to know where it's hiding. And it's hiding all over the place. It's thickening sauces. It's thickening stews. It's thickening gravies. It's in salad dressings. It's being used to coat all sorts of different things. It's in all standard soy sauce. So every Asian restaurant, unless I go in there and I say, when you make my dish, because in Asian restaurants they make everything fresh except the soup. So I can't have their soup because it's going to have wheat in it, or it might. But everything else they're making for me. So I just say, I'm allergic to soy sauce. I'm not. I'm allergic to soy sauce. Make whatever you're making for me without soy sauce. And I bring in an organic, wheat-free aged tamari sauce, which is the real high-level soy sauce, and they can be gotten wheat-free and organic. And I just bring that in the dropper to put the flavor back in of what the soy sauce was. All right, why are most gluten-free foods bad for your health? Well, that's real easy. Food that was always gluten-free, okay? Beef, lamb, chicken, fish, nuts, vegetables. There's never been any gluten in any of those. Those are all totally fine. There's nothing wrong with those. However, if the industry takes a gluten-containing food, so we've got, pasta and bread and muffins and cakes and cookies and everything else, donuts, and they make a gluten-free version, what they have found will substitute in there and work is some number combined of the following 4. Cornstarch or cornmeal, rice flour, potato starch, and tapioca starch. 2 or 4 of all of those will be there in place of wheat. Well, those 4 combined or separately convert into sugar faster in your body than the wheat does. They convert into sugar in your body so fast, you might as well just have eaten the time-release candy bar. And so, yes, you've avoided the substance that maybe you react to because it's a sort of an allergy, but you're eating a candy bar instead because everything's going to turn so fast into sugar. So the gluten-free stuff, when they're making something, that's not a healthy food. And there it is. Watch out, because they use rice flour, potato starch. These turn into sugar in your body so fast, it's like eating a candy bar. Raises your blood sugar level and makes you hungry. My lecture title includes memory. So the brain is made up mostly of fats, and that's been known for a long, long time. That's even taught in medical schools. So low-fat diet is harming the neurological system in your brain, which is most of your brain is a whole bunch of neurons, and that will decrease your memory over time. There's a lot of published research that has now proven that lowering your cholesterol below where your body has decided it wants to be. We got a lot of feedback mechanisms. Our body is doing things for reasons. And every time we tell it, I don't care what you want, body. That's just, we're gonna take something that's gonna prevent you from doing what you want to do. In the vast majority of cases, we decrease health. So, and like I said, the amount of cholesterol you eat doesn't matter at all. So we have lots of published research that has now proven that lowering your cholesterol reduces memory function. Pharmaceutical companies have worked very hard not to let you get access to that research. They've also worked very hard, which is really scary, to not let your doctors get access to that research. So fish and cod liver oils support memory. Vitamin E complex, especially a good one, my favorite is called Unique E, supports memory. Phosphatidylcholine, which is also called lecithin, supports memory and supports the liver. Phosphatidylserine is another phospholipid, which supports memory. Those are all things that do a huge amount for memory function. And again, you'll have a set of these, plus you'll be able to get them online. A couple other memory tips. A lot of artificial sweeteners, specifically aspartame, neotame, crystal light, have been shown to destroy brain cells quite a bit. I mean, more than you would ever want to know. If you watch that movie, Sweet Misery, A Poisoned World, you get a lot of that information. Alpha-lipoic acid supports the nerves in the liver. Low dose, 5 milligrams of lithium. People that have certain emotional disorders are put by their doctors on high-dose lithium as a drug. 300 milligrams, 350 milligrams, 400 milligrams. That's bipolar disorder. 5 milligrams, that's a nutritional supplement amount of lithium. That's the amount you might get if there was the right amount of lithium in our food. That amount supports memory function. Deficiencies of any nutrient can harm the brain. So who knows how many different things anybody is deficient in. Unless we run really extensive panels on everybody, sometimes it's easier to bring in a good multivitamin and some extras rather than spending too much money doing other things. Mercury in our brain, the majority of which has been proven to have come from silver amalgam fillings in our teeth, destroys brain cells. You never, ever, ever want to get your silver fillings removed and replaced by a dentist that hasn't been properly trained in doing so, or they will put more mercury into you as they drill them out and vaporize it than if they left them there. So anytime you're going to do that, if somebody decides to, it has to be a properly trained mercury-free holistic dentist, or you can make things worse. So do I recommend that to my patients? Of course I do. And then I give them a list of which dentist they should go to. If they say, oh, I have one, I'll do some research and check on him or her to make sure. Because if your dentist still would be willing to put a silver filling in your body, guaranteed they haven't been trained in removing it. Guaranteed. Because the ones that have been trained in removing it have learned how bad it is for them to be around it, and they won't have it in their office. They're also protecting themselves while they're removing it from you, so they're not breathing it in. So very, very careful. And as I mentioned earlier in the lecture, excellent book, The End of Alzheimer's by Dale Bredesen, MD. Really, really good book. So the elephant in the room, I recently attended the first international scientific conference to be held in the U.S., there have been some other countries, on electromagnetic fields. And I thought I knew, well I do know a lot about it, but I thought I knew almost everything about EMFs because I've been studying them for a long time. They're even worse than I thought they were. And it's very, very scary. So a number of research scientists, when they put together this gigantic symposium, they said, we'll be more than happy to fly in, present our research, show you what we've found in both our human and our animal studies, but we won't sleep or lecture in a place that has Wi-Fi. So they had to find a location to house the conference in that would agree to turn off all the Wi-Fi in the buildings that we all slept in and in the lecture hall that the 300 or 400 of the attendees were in. They found one, someplace I'd never heard of, 1440 Multiversity in Scotts Valley, 40 minutes outside of San Jose. And even that, because of the sensitivities and the people going, I won't expose myself to this stuff, because they know. Every day after breakfast, we all, come into this big lecture hall, and there are 2 or 3 people walking around the lecture hall with, $400 to $800 German and U.S.-made meters that check for microwaves. And every time one of them would start going off, they'd go see who it was. Ma'am, sir, you didn't turn your cell phone off. You didn't turn your Wi-Fi off on your computer. I remember one woman was about 5 seats away from me, and the guy's meter starts screaming. And he goes to see where it is, goes over to her, and he said, you've got something on that has to be turned off. She said, I don't. I don't think I would be silly enough to say that when somebody with a meter is screaming at me. Obviously, she said, I don't. And so he's going around, he says, it's in your purse. There's nothing in my purse. Open your purse, ma'am. She opens her purse, and there's her cell phone. She said, oh, I was certain I left that in my room. So the people that were there insisted that there not be any of the microwaves going on in the lecture hall, and they even did that. They know how bad this stuff is for us. Unbelievable research. I mean, we've got people's sperm counts going way down, and the sperm themselves not moving very much because the man walks around all day carrying a cell phone, either on his waist or in his pocket. We've got increases in colon cancer, cervical cancer, ovarian cancer, because the women are walking around with them in the same place or right next to them in their purse. They've got a number of cases now where women have gotten breast cancers with multiple primary breast tumors, which is supposed to be impossible. Primary meaning it's the one. And they had multiple primaries. All those people carried their cell phones in their bra. And so all the hot spots on the cell phone were causing cancer. So there's a lot of research we know about this, and the public is not being told because too many advertising dollars go into the media on people that are advertising to us to use Verizon and use Qualcomm and here's your new connection for your TV can all be wireless. Amazing. I have not had Wi-Fi or cordless phones in my home or my office for 20 years. I learned this stuff a long time ago, and I went, I like my memory. My memory is a good thing. It's as good today at 67 as it was at 40. I'd like it to be as good at 77, 87, 97, and if I can make it 107, maybe 117. But I'm not going to be able to do that if I'm around things or eating things or doing things that are harmful to the brain and neurological system. Last time I had my cholesterol checked, and I didn't do it on purpose because since I know the cholesterol number doesn't matter, I don't bother. But since I was running a panel on myself, just take a look at a bunch of different things, and it happened to be there. And my cholesterol was 253, which is very healthy. And so I said, okay, that's good. The doctor would immediately go, oh my God, we have to put you on a drug. So those are my girls. That's where I get lots of my love every day. And now I'll be happy to answer questions. And absolutely, you were first.
It sounds to me like you're proposing a keto diet.
Good point. Am I proposing a ketogenic diet? It's interesting. The ketogenic diet, most of the people that are talking about keto aren't going over it correctly. Because in order to know you're on a ketogenic diet, you've got to buy a blood ketone meter and be testing yourself a few times a day. And there's research in a lot of different areas. So ketogenic diet has definitely helped people with diabetes. It's definitely helped people with cancer. It's definitely helped some people with resistant weight loss where nothing else they did worked. I like to look at long-term studies because in order to prove that any method of eating, we give it a name, we call it a diet, but any method of eating, because really a diet is somebody trying to lose weight, is healthy, you need 5 generations that have been eating that way, and they haven't lost a bunch of health. Things haven't come up. Because sometimes it's the second, third generation, things get worse and worse. And you do something for 6 months or a year, and you go, wow, this helped this, and this, and you don't realize, yeah, but it's going to hurt that, and that. So we need 5 generations on a particular method of eating to determine that it's a healthy way of eating. We got a big planet. And so the question is, do we have one tribal community? We had 2 that were 100% zero carbohydrates. We have one community anywhere that the diet that they've been eating, or the way they've been eating for thousands of years before maybe we infringed on them and screwed everything up with the SAD, S-A-D, Standard American Diet, that was keto. No, we don't. So we therefore can't prove that long-term, like somebody's lifetime, or from the time they learn about it, that a ketogenic diet is really not going to cause any other problems. But the people that are on it for specifically good medical reasons, such as diabetes, resistant weight loss, neurological problems, seizures, which is what it started for. The ketogenic diet was begun decades ago because somebody said, these people that have seizures, it was before the seizure medications came out, which of course are not anywhere near as good a way to do something as diet. These people that have these seizures, these various different epileptic and other types of seizures, the neurological system of the body loves fats. What happens if we bathe it in fats? What happens if we put the person on a really high fat diet and they have them eating, coconut oil and butter and all these different good quality oils? And in many cases, all their seizure disorders went away. And then somebody got this silly idea that there's something wrong with the fats that we're using, though, because we started moving forward and people started being given incorrect information with bad research. And so they started changing the ketogenic diet people from good fats like butter and ghee and coconut oil, and they said, oh no, those are bad fats. No, those were good good fats, but they got misled, and they said, let's instead put them on margarine and canola, and they started getting all sorts of other problems. So the ketogenic diet fell out of favor. Ketogenic diet is okay for some people. I don't give my diet a name. I say that for the vast majority of the public, the healthiest diet is that each meal should have adequate amounts of the good fats, and there aren't that many. The good fats are whatever fat is in properly raised animals and fish and birds and everything. If they're eating what they're supposed to be eating, their fats are good fats. And then the extra ones are legitimate extra virgin olive oil, ghee or butter from grass-fed cows, all the fats that are in dairy, if the dairy is raw and grass-fed. I brought my own milk to have with my lunch because they don't serve it here. I lovingly call it double fat, raw organic grass-fed milk. And I call it double fat because in the United States, milk is called whole if it is 3.25, 3.25% butter fat. If you don't remove any of the butter fat and you leave it alone, however it comes out of that cow, on some of the varieties of cows it comes out at 6 or 7%. And that's the ones that I get. So that's not homogenized, not pasteurized, grass-fed. So all of those are good, and some type of good quality animal protein and whatever the fats are in it, and any non-starchy vegetables that you like, and by all means, melt some butter over them.
Yeah, the modern keto diets sort of agree with you, if you read about them. You agree with Stephen Gundry's most of his research? He published in his book said the guy who put his picture on Time magazine because he came up with a low-fat diet should have been in jail because he falsified his data, and they've proven it, that he threw out the data that didn't support his research.
That is correct, and those are the people that point to the China study, and they said, but I read the China study, and I went, no, you didn't. They go, yeah, I read this China study. I didn't. No, you didn't. A study gets published in a research journal. You read a book entitled The China Study. That's not a study. That's a book. Now go to my website, type China into the search box, and you'll get a great rebuttal that somebody put up on the China study. But do I believe in Stephen Gundry? Stephen Gundry, I'll get you next. Stephen Gundry had a lot of good things in his book, but all the reasons were wrong. So, for example, he said, don't eat this because of all of the lectins that are in there, and they're going to hurt you. No, don't eat that because it's not ripe. He said, don't eat green peppers. They're not ripe. Just that's enough of a reason they're not ripe. Don't eat the grain-fed cattle because the lectins from the corn get into the grain and now you're eating no, don't eat them because that's not what cattle are supposed to eat. So he ended up, for all the wrong reasons, saying a lot of things that are correct. And so people have felt a lot better, and that's good.
Yeah.
In the back.
Yes. Would you please speak about salmon? And of course we know we get a lot of farmed salmon, which is not really cold water.
Sure.
And the instance of plastic in the ocean.
Well, the instance of plastic in the ocean, the amount of toxic crap that's going into our environment disgusts me horribly, and I wish I was a multi-trillionaire and could just do all the things necessary to pass all the right laws to get people to vote in the right way and to get rid of all that stuff. But there's nothing I can really do about that, and I think it's horrible. Salmon is a very healthy food as long as it is wild-caught. And the problem is that people misinterpret words today. So like I had a patient in my office last December, and she said, Whole Foods has wild-caught salmon on sale. And I said, that's not possible. She said, what do you mean? I said, well, you said they've got wild-caught salmon. It's got to be frozen. No, it's fresh. I said, can't be. She said, no, I was just there yesterday. So I pick up the phone, I call Whole Foods, get me the meat department in the back. Do you have fresh, not frozen, wild-caught salmon? And of course the person says, how can we possibly have that? Salmon season ended months ago. I said, thank you, hung up the phone. So people are misinterpreting words, and they're taking a word which in the United States, sadly, has no meaning at all. And that word is fresh. We have another word, natural. They're not legislated. Of course it's fresh. What are they going to send you, rancid fish? Oh, that says rancid. I'm not going to buy this. No, this says laden with bacteria. I'm not going to. Oh, this one says fresh. Okay, I'm going to buy that one. So they use words to try and get you to buy things. They don't mean anything. But if you can get wild-caught salmon, preferably never frozen, or if it was frozen only once. And so what I will do is I'll sometimes go to Costco when the salmon are running the most, which is usually sometime in August. And that's when their price goes down to like $9.95 a pound. and I want the ones that they just got in on Sunday, and they just filleted on Sunday, and they put out on Monday when they open. So it says packed, on the day, and I bring in a cooler, and I'll buy 30 pounds of wild-caught, fresh, never frozen U.S. or Canadian salmon, and I'll bring it back to my house, cut it into about 12-ounce portions, put a bunch of my favorite spices on it, vacuum seal it, and put it in my big chest-type freezer. So that's the freshest. The idea is you want it frozen as close to when it was caught and filleted as possible. Now I have one of my patients and students who has crewed on some of the salmon boats. So he's got connections with some of those people, and he can bring the stuff in that gets immediately caught and brought in. But you don't want anything that isn't wild, and you want it as fresh as you can get it.
Yeah. Okay, tilapia.
Tilapia I would never eat because there is no such thing as wild tilapia. Tilapia is exclusively a farm-raised fish. So therefore I would never eat it. I will not eat. And if you go to my website and put in fish chart, you should be able to get my large fish chart that goes over the amount of mercury in different fish. So I want, number one, I want it to be low mercury. And number two, I want it to be wild caught. And number three, I want to be able to know that it was either caught and rapidly frozen, or it was caught pretty recently. So like in San Diego, we have La Jolla Seafood, Point Loma Seafood, Catalina Seafood. We have a couple of markets where they have just all seafood stuff. And if I go to one of those and walk in, I will ask somebody, what fish was caught in the last 48 hours? And I'll take a look and see what it is. Is it something that's low mercury I'm interested in? If it's shark, which is super high mercury, I wouldn't touch it. If it's orange roughy, which is super high mercury, I wouldn't touch it. But if it's one of the foods I might eat, and they've got wild caught and it was just caught recently and it's been sitting on ice, I might grab that one in. I saw another hand in the back.
The patch, X39 stem cell, do you have anything to say?
I have not found that the X39 stem cell, I do something called muscle testing. And if you want to learn more about it, rather than my wasting a bunch of time here, go to my website. On the bottom of the home page, there's a picture of me pressing on somebody's arm. Click on that picture, and I do a 90-minute lecture at a medical conference on muscle testing. And my slides are there, and the audio is there. So you can download the slides and advance them yourself while you listen to it. Nobody has tested for the X39 patch. The glutathione patch of theirs, massive numbers of my patients are testing for it, and they're going on. So I couldn't tell you why. Muscle testing doesn't give you something that comes out of your mouth and tells you why something needs to test. But I have not had anybody on the X39 patch, and I have lots of people on their glutathione patch. So obviously, the company does make some good stuff.
So the glutathione?
Glutathione patch, I know the doctor, the MD, who did their research study on the glutathione patch. When I saw his name on there, I went, really? He's testing, he's doing something on a multi-level company. I called him up, he said, hey, I was blown away. He said it really worked. So for that I use.
A good sleep aid?
Sleep aids differ from person to person. The first thing I want somebody to do if they want to try and get better sleep is move your bed 3 feet from the wall so you have less exposure to the wirings that are coming out. Turn off your Wi-Fi. Don't have the cell phone within 15 feet of your bed. And a lot of people go, wow, that really helped my sleep. How come nobody tells us that? Because they're not looking at the research studies. Other than that, everybody's different. ReadyZorb is a manufacturer that makes my favorite melatonin spray, and I've seen that help with a lot of people. There are a lot of other different products in the market, and one person says this one worked, another person says that one worked, because we're the variable, we're all different.
Called ReadyZorb?
Yeah, the company is ReadyZorb, R-E-A-D-I, ReadyZorb, S-O-R-B. They have a liposomal spray glutathione that I've had better results with than any other glutathione on the market. I saw another hand?
Yes,
Yep.
if you're taking anticoagulants
Yep.
and you want to take the cod liver oil or other fish supplements, is there a problem?
Is there any kind of interaction between a fish and cod liver oil and anticoagulants? No, there is no. There is not. As a matter of fact, I had an interesting, I don't want to say argument, but somebody said, my doctor doesn't want me on fish oils because I'm on a blood thinner. And I went, well, first of all, they don't interact, so it's not a problem. But that's not the issue. The issue is, ask your doctor, because I mean, if you get your doctor's answer to what I'm about to say, now you've got it from the person treating you, which is much better, because that's the person you're supposed to be listening to. Ask your doctor, if you needed your blood to be a little thinner than it is, And if that could be done either with some fish oil or a prescription drug, which would you choose? If your doctor is not an ignorant fool, your doctor will say, well, if you're telling me they'll both do exactly what I want, of course I take the fish oil. Okay, very good. That shows me the doctor is not an ignorant fool. Now, the question is, since when you are on blood thinners of any kind, they test your blood repeatedly on most of them to make sure it's in the range they want. So if, which I have never found to be true, but if taking a fish oil, which is very good for you, an anti-inflammatory, will reduce all sorts of different possible things in the future. If taking that successfully made your blood a little bit thinner, which I've never found it to do, but if it did that, they'd be able to, on their next test, reduce your drug a little to get it where they want it. How is that not a good thing? So that's a more complete answer. Yes?
Avocados and cooking with avocado oil.
Avocados are very healthy. I have no problem with avocados. As far as I'm concerned, the question was, do I like avocados? And how about cooking with avocado oil? So avocados are very healthy. I mean, if somebody wanted to eat an avocado every single day, as long as it didn't take the place of some food you should be getting. So somebody's eating an avocado and they're not getting any good animal protein, we might have a problem. But as long as they're getting everything else fine, I love avocados. I have not seen the research I need for avocado oil for cooking. There's something called smoke point, where they say that they determine whether or not the fat shouldn't be used at that temperature because it's starting to smoke. But apparently there are fats and oils which smoke at a temperature higher than they were being hurt at. In other words, they were already being hurt and you didn't know it because they hadn't started to smoke yet. So they say avocado oil has a very high smoke point and therefore it's a high temperature cooking fat. I haven't seen legitimate research that I'm going to believe that yet. So if somebody says I want a cooking fat, I would like them to be cooking in the high temperature fats that we know are totally fine, which is coconut oil, ghee, and palm fruit oil. And if the temperature isn't too high, macadamia might be fine. And if the temperature is even lower, a good quality extra virgin olive oil.
Peanut oil.
Peanut oil, I haven't been able to find any peanut oil in the United States that was made at a low enough temperature that they didn't damage it beforehand. But otherwise, peanut oil has been used traditionally. Right, peanut oil has been used traditionally for thousands of years, but they weren't pressing it at the temperatures we are now. So the companies that I now get really good quality oils from, which are Omega Nutrition, Flora Health, and Rapunzel Organics, none of them are making a peanut oil, and the other companies are overheating it and then deodorizing it. So the peanut oil was bad before I bought it. Otherwise, it would be fine. Yeah?
The Wi-Fi and the internet, we're not going to be getting rid of.
No, I'm sure that would
But
be.
my
Yeah.
question is, I've heard that grounding and earthing, and sometimes some of the crystal rocks will modulate the high frequency of the 4G or 5G into more like the Schumann resonance.
So what are the things that we can do to help reduce the effects of things like Wi-Fi when we can't make them go away because we're not in our own house and under control? And yes, some of the grounding mats can be helpful if the ground they're plugged into is really, really good. The only substance that I've seen and that I've done enough tests on that I know it's legitimate if you get one that isn't wrong is a product called, it's a substance, it's a mineral, called shungite. S-H-U-N-G-I-T-E, shungite. And there's some fake shungite out there, but I mean, when it's good, it comes from Karelia in Russia. I probably have ordered, $15,000 worth in the last 5 years. I have, all my patients have it. And if you have a large enough piece of shungite, let's see, maybe a 4-inch diameter sphere of shungite, and I guess it's S-H-U-N-G-I-T-E. If you've got a 4-inch diameter sphere of shungite, it puts out this, it's just like Star Trek, it's ridiculous, I don't understand it. But I've tested it, it works. It puts out this protected field that reduces the harmful nature of the electric fields you're exposed to. Doesn't eliminate them. Maybe it's going to reduce the harm by 25 or 30%. Hey, if you can't do anything else to reduce it, then that's worth it. So yes, I have nothing against shungite.
Yeah, all that. And then also I was reading that if you've got the cell phone or the Wi-Fi or whatever it is, at least 1.5 feet a foot away from your body rather than against your
Okay,
body.
the rule is distance is your friend
Right, yeah.
when it comes to electric fields that are harmful. But for some things, distance helps a lot quickly, and for some things, even though it's helping, it's not helping a lot. So for electric fields in the wall, okay, the wires that are going in all of our walls, that's 60 cycle electro and electromagnetic fields. Those don't have a very large area of influence. So if your bed is 3 feet away from the wall, if when you're sitting at your desk and you've got a power strip and maybe your computer and stuff, and you go, you know, that's not supposed to be plugged in there. That's right next to my feet. We're going to unplug it and plug it into something further away. That makes a big difference. When you're using a transmitter, such as Wi-Fi, that you could connect to 200 feet away outside on your patio, the 2 or 3 feet or 4 feet in your room doesn't make a big difference. It's still beneficial. Every distance you can do is fine. But something that goes that far doesn't make a big difference. My house is a safe zone. I use a microwave meter. I can walk around my entire house, and there's no place in my house that gets above 35 microwatts per square meter. And there's nothing in my house generating. Zero. So why isn't it zero? It's all coming in from the cell towers 2 or 3 miles away. So 2 or 3 miles away, another 2 or 3 feet, it could care less. So for things that are transmitting, the distance doesn't help as much and as quickly, but it always helps a little. Yes?
3 questions. What about honey as a sweetener? Secondly, what about fluoride? And thirdly, what about a buckwheat, which is a seed?
Okay, so honey is a sweetener. Honey is pure sugar. And sugar is sugar. And the idea that honey is only better if you're putting it on a wound. Externally, it's still listed on some of the military sites, for being able to do something on a wound when you're out in battle. But internally, it's still pure sugar. Buckwheat, the idea that something is a seed instead of a grain. I had an interesting conversation with the person that brought quinoa into this country. And I said something about, quinoa is 75% starch. It's got just as much starch as the other grains. And he said, quinoa is not a grain, it's a seed. And I looked at him. And this is the guy that introduced quinoa into the United States. I said, quinoa is a seed, not a grain? He said, that's right. I said, please name for me a grain that is not a seed. And he thought about it. He said, wow. Huh. That's right. Every grain is a seed. You plant it and you get a grain plant. Huh. Interesting. Very good point. So the only thing that makes buckwheat in any way better than something else is that it isn't wheat. So if somebody is reactive to wheat, and they're avoiding wheat, they're not going to react to buckwheat, and so that's fine. But it's still 75% starch. As far as fluoride, there has never been any research shown that fluoride in our drinking water supply does anything except increase hip fracture rates, cause dental fluorosis, reduce IQ in children, and hurt our brains. And that's been shown over and over and over again. It's one of the In Search of Unknown Facts on my website. And if you go there and you go down to fluoride, there'll be a couple of the books and things on it that you can read about it to take a look at it. So fluoride, if you can avoid it, is a very good idea. And of course, they made them finally, because of all the poisonings, put a warning back in 1997 on every single toothpaste tube that has fluoride. Warning! If you swallow more than a pea-sized amount, call poison control immediately. Nobody reads their toothpaste. So if you've got Crest or Colgate or any of those things, get the box, read the warning, which you've never read before. So yeah, I would never use a fluoridated toothpaste.
So something like buckwheat with limited use, like maybe once a week or...
Well, again, at any time, it's important to understand that any time you do something that's a step in the right direction, it's a help. I have patients that come to me and they've waited 2 months to get to see me. They've paid, my fee for their 4-hour consultation. They've kept a 1-week diet log. They've watched my 3-hour DVD. They've filled out all my forms. And very often, they will, unless they're coming to me with stage 4 cancer and they're supposed to be dead in 3 months, those people usually will do everything I want immediately. But for other things, they'll do 70%, 80%. And generally, within 2 months, they're already feeling so much better than they felt in years, that they start doing more, and then they start doing more, and they start doing more, and after 4, 5, 6 months, they're doing like 90% of what I taught them. And then what happens is, very often, they're at a party, they're at an anniversary, they're at a wedding, and they go, hey, I've been so fantastic now for 6 months. I haven't done anything wrong. I've taken the supplements. I'm going to have a glass of champagne and a piece of wedding cake. And thankfully, because as your body gets cleaner, it is thanking you the whole time, but you get to see the thanks, and then you smack it in the face, and it lets you know. And so they go, I used to have like 3 pieces of wedding cake and 4 glasses of champagne, and yeah, I'd get a little tipsy, and the next day I'd feel normal. But my normal now is so much better than my old normal. I had 1 small piece of wedding cake and a half a glass of champagne, and David, thank you very much. I feel like crap the next day. And I said, you're welcome. And that's the type of stuff that gives you the impetus to continue to do the right things, because once you clean the body out, when you do something it doesn't like, it lets you know more forcefully. And that's a good thing, because that helps us do the right things. So I got to pack up because I'll be teaching my class tonight. Thank you all for being here. Like I said, I'm going to get all this stuff together and have it up on my website hopefully within a couple weeks. Yes, my girls are beautiful, definitely.